Welcome to the HR Stories podcast, listener question edition, where there is a lesson in every story. Each week, the team at HR Stories podcast shares questions from our podcast audience and provides tangible, practical advice that everyone can use to get HR right. Our hosts today are management and HR consultants Chuck Simikian and John Thalheimer. What is on your mind today? Welcome to the HR Stories podcast, where there is a lesson in every story, the question and answer edition.
Woo!
Hey, speaking of edition, Chuck, so we have this new thing.
Yeah.
It's called Send Us a Text.
Send us
your
a text.
Or something like that, right? And so one of the things we want to increase is our ability to interact with our listeners. And so we put that on there and we want you to use it. We want you to interact with us. We want to say the show was great, or I didn't understand that question, or why have this question? Would you answer this question? And so what we're going to do is the first 5 people that use that send your text message to us. So you go to your show notes, you'll see it's the first thing in there. And the first 5 people will get a copy of the Ultimate Guide to HR Checklist Edition.
Love it.
And so we want to send that's coming out this fall. What?
Oh, yeah.
What?
I never heard of the book, but that's why it's coming out. It's coming out this fall. I love it.
It's coming out. Right? Yeah, it's coming out this fall.
Who wrote it?
We're releasing it in September. Chuck and I have been working hard on this probably for the last 12 months. And so we want you to have a new copy of it. And so go there, first 5 people, put in their email. We will send you one there. And then for everyone else, listen to the podcast through August and September, because we're going to give out special codes where you can get better pricing.
I love it.
And so that's good. The book's going to list for $69, but we're going to have some codes that you'll be able to get it for a little bit less.
Yeah, but it is packed.
All right, Chuck, what are our
jam-packed.
questions today?
All right. Well, John, as always, for me, I love going to the mountain of questions and knowledge, the Facebook group HR Team of One on Facebook. That's HR Team of One. Almost 4,000 people. Well, over 3,500, close to 4,000 folks. Free. Join it. It's HR people helping HR folks. And so question number 1 was, as you discussed in our previous episode, you were getting a lot of questions on FMLA, and this is an FMLA question. And it's, I love the site because just when you think you've heard everything, here's a new angle. So this is a kind of a neat angle here. Yeah. So this person writes, "Hi, I'm in need of some guidance." She posts this on the Facebook page, which you can do anonymously also if you don't want your company to find out you're posting and asking questions. But we love to know who posts also. So anyways, she says, "I'm fairly new to this role and I'm dealing with my first FMLA case. I have an employee who requested FMLA leave. And I sent her the paperwork. She returned. The forms were filled out by the nurse practitioner at the doctor's office, and who she has not seen for this condition. And so this employee's manager basically asked, well, why hasn't the doctor filled it out? And the employee said, well, he won't fill it out, and that her PCP, the nurse practitioner, is the communications person in the office and fills these out. So the bottom line is it's kind of a longer question, but the manager, the operations manager in this company, basically says you need to get a real doctor's note. And so the HR person says, look, it's my first time dealing with this. Can we insist on the certification coming from the treating physician, the orthopedic on the case? And if not, can we deny her PTO pay? Can we deny her FMLA leave? And the employee is being evasive. What feedback do you have? And I know, John, I answered it, and I know you answered it for these folks.
Yeah, and again, right, I think one of the things is if the nurse practitioner is in the same office as the doctor, I don't see the problem. I don't see a problem. I would take that note. I don't think it's worth it. I don't think and I was saying this today in my workshop, Chuck. You can go if you want. You're like, you know what? This medical note, this doctor's note is kind of sketchy. I'm not 100% sure this person has this issue. You can send them to your own company doctor, right? You can send them to somebody else. You have to pay for it. You have to pay for all the tests. You got to do all that. And then you may come back and it may be the exact, it may be slightly off, or it can be completely different. And then if it's completely different and you're like, well, and you and the employer then going to have to pick a third doctor, which you're going to have to pay for to go through it. And to me, it's about building trust. And do you trust this person? And do you feel good about this person? And so it seems like there's something going on, right? There's something sketchy going on for sure. But I don't know how much I would fight it at this point. To me, it's always about performance, performance, performance. Obviously, this person fell and hurt themselves. How bad is it? We don't know. And so I would be careful about going too far, building that I don't trust you as an employee, especially as a new HR person, right? I'd be like, all right, this is what we're doing. Here's the form that you filled out. Here's the doctor's note. You're going to take FMLA. You don't get paid for it. It's not a benefit. It just saves their job, right? It just saves their job there. And then you follow your company policies around terms of vacation and sick time and how much they have to use.
That's perfect. That's pretty much, John, what I was going to say. I mean, it's like the perfecto answer. My only addition to this is if you continue to put this employee through hoops, that could come across as FMLA interference, interfering with her legal right to pursue FMLA. And that could land you in even bigger trouble. So tell that manager, I would say, stay in your lane, dude. I got this. You don't need to get involved. And in fact, I will suggest the manager does not need to know the specifics here. Manager doesn't need to know the doctor's note. You as the HR person, you're the intake for that. You're just letting the manager thumbs up, thumbs down, good to go, not good to go. And that's it. They don't need to know the details.
Yeah, and I didn't understand the whole can we deny PTO pay? I don't know where that comes in. There's no, right? They were sick. They had a doctor's note. Let's move on.
Yeah, sounds like control. I'm a bit. Yeah, control issues. Someone has control issues.
Well, and it could be a lack of trust, right? That manager could know a lot more information than we know.
Sure.
And maybe they know that this employee is trying to get away from something. At this point, as the new HR person, that's how I would address it. And then I would sit down maybe with the manager and going, all right, I want to go through all your employees. I want to get to know them. I want to know the issues, that kind of stuff. And then you'll have some more background in that.
Excellent. All right. Our next question, John, and yes. One of our answers is, we have a checklist for this. Woo, woo. Okay. So this person writes from the HR team of one community, I need some advice from any HR director or higher in regards to merger and acquisition. Specifically, I'm looking for a timeline. I need to provide a timeline of all things HR that we will need to do pre and post transaction. It looks like there's some sort of merger of two companies going on. And they also need to provide the time frame of everything that needs to get done. So she says, for example, I-9 audits being done a month before closing or whatever the time frame is. Can someone please assist me in finding a checklist with time frame for that?
Well, Chuck, that's you. You have been through this merger and acquisition thing numerous times, and you created our checklist for the Ultimate Guide to HR Checklist Edition. So, what should you do? What should be that process, right? And so we don't know if it's a merger or acquisition. And I think that matters. I would guess that matters because a merger could be bringing two people to versus if you're being taken over, that's a different thing. So give us your wisdom on this, Chuck.
Oh, sure. You know what? And I got to tell you, I did not load up that checklist, but if you join the HR Team of One community, we are going to provide that checklist to the community this week. So that'll be in the files on that HR Team of One Facebook page. But I did focus on the I-9s. Well, just a couple of general things when it comes to mergers and acquisitions. You know, as an HR person, your job is the communication. You got two entities coming together, and someone's got to be there saying what's going on here, letting these folks know what's going on here. They're going to be looking to someone for answers. And if you're the company and you're the HR person in the company that's being taken over, your employees, including your senior leaders, are looking to you for answers. And the vice versa. If you're the company coming in and you're the HR person, those folks are going to look to you for a lot of answers. What's going to happen to my benefits? What's going to happen to my vacation? What's going to happen to, I requested next week off. So things like that. But when it comes to some of the other things, and this person asked about the I-9s, and I had to share, John, based on my experience. And I told her, I said, if you have any influence over this process, I would suggest for the I-9s that on the close date, when you close on that transaction, that you box up all the I-9s, all the employee files, all the old applications, and you ship them to the former owners. You get them out of your office because you want to start with I-9s that are fresh. And usually most transactions like this will let you get to the employees a week before and put them through your hiring process. And why is that important? Because if you accept the old company's I-9s, the old company's background check results, the old company, basically, especially the I-9s, if you accept them, you're stuck with them and you accept all of their liability going back several years because you have them. So it is best to get rid of them and start over. So that was my advice.
Yeah, no, and I think, again, that's good, right? And I think you're thinking about, I'm coming in, I'm acquiring your company. That means the employee identification number is going away. That company is going away. That company is being dismissed. Sometimes, though, the acquisition is, hey, we're now the owners of your company, but you're still a company. Nothing's happening differently except for the chief executive officer. Everything else is staying the same. And so you need to be aware of that. Let me give you an example, Chuck. So my wife worked for a small consulting company out of DC, and a large commercial real estate company bought the company. And the only thing that really changed at first was that the CEO was no longer the CEO. The owner was no longer the CEO. She had a different title, blah, blah, blah. Right? And so the company still exists, still had the federal employment identification number, all that was there. And then over time, they were able to give them better benefits and that kind of stuff, right? And so again, it depends on where you are in that process. But I do like the thought of we need to think about, what are we doing with the old files? What are we doing with that information? Because it can be a new company taking over. And so just being aware and really thinking about that. And the other point that I thought was brilliant was you're that communication hub. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times, and Chuck, tell me if I'm wrong, a lot of the times you're in the midst of this emotional, oh my gosh, I'm working for a company now, I'm not working, I don't know where I'm going, I don't know my role.
Oh, yeah.
You have to kind of forget that and put that aside and say, I'm here. I'm going to help all my employees to the best of my knowledge. And then I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to have my meltdown later on. Right. And so kind of some of that time, it's hard, but you have to do it.
Yeah. It's really hard, especially when you deal with some of those really confident senior leaders that know everything and they're completely in the dark sometimes. And you as the HR person know more than them. And they're coming to you saying, hey. Right. So, all right, we got one more question. It's kind of long. Try and abbreviate as much as possible. But this person says, I got a call from our HR at our parent company. So I guess, there's maybe the corporate or the home office HR person calls and says, hey, you down at this division, whatever, you're getting an interim CFO. And that was news to me. I hadn't heard anything, and I report to her. I don't think he was supposed to tell me. Like the HR person, her home office HR person wasn't supposed to tell her. So she talks about how they had let some people go, the CEO go in early February, March without warning. And he had only been with them for a year. Now I am getting a little nervous about my job. I'm 6 months pregnant, and we know managers aren't supposed to discriminate, but I know we do. And I'm the HR manager with a recruiter and a part-time payroll person. I've been with the company 15 months. I've got a great review. I've got 8% increase. She says they didn't have HR before I got here. I'm being told I'm doing a great job. I'm not getting any complaints. And so she's venting, basically. She's like, I'm not sure if I'm venting, if I'm scared. I'm looking for advice on what to do. And it was interesting to see some of the responses from some of the folks. A lot of the folks were like, look, you can't change what you're not going to change. Just keep on keeping on, stay looking forward, keep doing a great job. My thought was document any interactions. Once again, keep doing a great job, but maintain regular and fluid communication with your HR leader. And when that new CFO starts, you've got to establish a relationship with that person on day one. You need to go in, you need to be ready. You need to think like they would think. What are the questions they're going to ask? What are the basics? How many employees? How much turnover? I don't know, but think of those things. Go in and be the answer person, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine. What do you think?
No, that's good advice. And I was thinking along the same lines. Is this happens, right? This happens to us all the time. I was working for a company, and I don't remember how much it was, but maybe in a 3-year period, I had 4 different bosses. They were doing reorgs and shuffles and moving things around. And I will tell you, by the second one, I'm like, all right, this is it. I am creating a book on what John does at the company. Like, what do my departments do? Not what I do, but what do my departments do at the company? What we do really well? What are the challenges? And literally, when my third boss came in, I'm like, here, read this. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer you. Right? And you just get to that point where you just like, all right, well, I'm here. I'm doing my job. And I've always had like, look, if you're going to fire me, I'm talented enough. I can go somewhere else. And I know a lot of people, like if you're 6 months pregnant, that's not what you're thinking. Right. And so I get that level of nervousness. I get that level of anxiety. But I do think on that first day, I would definitely reach out to the HR person and say, hey, this is great news. I'm glad the CFO is coming. Can I build a stronger relationship? I know there's a lot going on right now, but I want to connect with you. I want to make sure I have a strong relationship with you. How's the best way to do that? Can we meet once a week or once every 2 weeks just to have a quick touch base? Hey, this is what we're doing. I want to make sure that we're doing it the way you want it done. And then the same thing with the CFO, to come in and say, look, this is where we are. This is what's happening. And I would also start thinking about who's going to replace you when you're out. Don't let them make that decision for you. Come up with a plan. And so if you're going to be on maternity leave for 12 weeks, you're going to take your full FMLA, come up and say, look, this is what I planned. I talked to so-and-so, and I want them to handle this. And because the CFO is going to be overwhelmed. And if you can take one thing off their plate, they're going to be like, oh, yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. Do you feel comfortable? I mean, really comfortable, because they're going to be taking over your role when you're not here. So, right. And that's me, the CFO, asking those questions. And it becomes important, right, to play that out and to kind of see some of that and be prepared. Look, you're already doing the job well. You're already gotten great raises. You got great reviews. Know that it's a different expectation now, and find out what those are and meet those expectations.
Excellent. Folks, you've been listening to the Q&A edition of the HR Stories podcast, where there's a lesson in every story. Like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget, John, what's the name of that new function we have about you could text us directly? What was that called again?
It's called fan mail, but it's send to text us. So we want fan mail from you. If you want us to communicate back, the best thing to do is put an email in there, because I think we just get the message, and I don't know if there's a way to go back. But you can do it, like if you watch, and I did it today, if you listen to us on Apple, it shows right up in the show notes. You can hit there. It'll pop up in your text message, and just send us a text. And then we'll get back to you.
All right. Thank you. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the HR Stories podcast. The material presented in this podcast is for informational purposes only. Chuck and John always recommend using an employment lawyer or HR consultant to handle any legal concerns or HR issues. We do our best to double check sources and make sure the information we are providing is accurate. We may eliminate or embellish without changing the basic narrative to make the story easier to understand. In certain circumstances, we may change identifying information to protect the innocent. The HR Stories broadcast is brought to you by the team at HR Stories. The team at HR Stories is designed to help anyone with HR responsibilities be better at managing the employee experience. To engage with us, go to the hrstoriesteam.com and learn more about how the team at HR Stories can support your business or nonprofit. Thank you for listening to the HR Stories podcast, where there is a lesson in every story.